Good evening and welcome to Face to Face. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Niresh Eliathambi. 30 years ago, in 1996, our parliament passed a landmark law. It was called the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, number 28 of 1996. And what it said quite simply was that differently abled people should have accessibility to all public buildings and public places. So public places means even privately owned restaurants, private buses, and so on and so forth. Any place which is frequented by the public. And differently abled means not just those who are physically handicapped, but those who are elderly as well. And Sri Lanka has a very high percentage of elderly people. We are, in fact, one of the oldest populations in Asia, if not the world. Our average age in Sri Lanka is about 34. Globally, it's a little over 30. So we are a very old population and we need to take care of the elderly. We need to take care of the differently abled. We need to give them accessibility. And this issue has come to the fore once again. After 30 years of ignoring this law, it has come to the fore because the low-flow buses, about 100 of which are now in operation, are the first buses which are being operated where differently abled people and elderly people can, in fact, comfortably board and get off. And to discuss this and the way forward with all of this is Mr. Kesarralal Gunasekera, former Member of Parliament, who was in fact in Parliament when this landmark legislation was passed 30 years ago. Good evening and welcome, Kesarralal.
Good evening, Niresh.
Now, Kesarralal, when we say accessibility, the general assumption is that it is someone who is physically handicapped, in a wheelchair or something like that. But the elderly, and in Sri Lanka, elderly person means over 60. Well, persons over 60 can certainly be physically active, and in fact with modern medicine and technology and diet and exercise and so on, you can be very active into your 70s and even further. But you don't have the energy to jump onto a moving 138 bus on Union Place. In fact, that's a dangerous thing to do even if you're 20 years old, not just when you're 60. But now we know, Kesarralal, the laws are there. There are Supreme Court judgments on this, and all of it was ignored. Now we have a window of opportunity. How should this go forward? Because it shouldn't just be buses. And these are new routes which they are operating on, but it needs to be more universal.
Which is true. I feel not only buses, trains as well has to come into the picture. Today, when you go to a train station to board a train, you have to fundamentally climb onto a train.
It's very difficult even for a 30-year-old.
Yeah, it's not that easy. So these are matters that have to be looked at. I'm so happy that the government is looking into all these areas and to take us forward. But as you said, it has been a long time. There is a long lapse as well.
In fact, Kesarralal, when you look at the number of Supreme Court judgments and so on, it's a crying shame that we treat our law with such contempt, as well as those in society who are not as fortunate as everyone else. If we go down the list here, there was the 1996 Act, which was followed by a regulation, the Disabled Persons Accessibility Regulations of 2006, and you had the Ministry of Social Services Circular number MSS 78 ACC. That's another circular which went out to all secretaries to ministries, to provincial councils, to district secretaries, and so on, to implement these accessibility laws. Then you had a fundamental rights case filed by Mr. Ajit Pereira, the late Mr. Ajit Pereira, who was himself differently abled, but he championed the rights of disabled persons. And the Supreme Court initially made an order in 2009. And what Mr. Ajit Pereira was asking was that the law should be implemented. The Supreme Court issued an initial order and a clarifying order and a final order in this same case. The final order was in 2011. So it's a very long history here. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court order was not implemented by anyone. And then Mr. Ajit Pereira went back to the Supreme Court. Unheard of that you have to go to the Supreme Court again and ask that their judgment be implemented. And the Supreme Court in 2018 gave an exhaustive 28-page judgment. And if I may quote from that, the stark truth is meaningful implementation of these accessibility laws by the state and the private sector is a continual failure, and thereby beyond doubt there is destructive marginalization, and it has caused continual violation and denial of opportunity of equality for safe access and their use in daily life by the country's largest minority. Now, this is another aspect, because when you take the differently abled, who are about 8%, and then you take the elderly, who are about 15%, there's a 23% segment of our population. However, they have been literally, not virtually, literally ignored by not just society, but by the state and by the private sector. So how does this go forward, Kesarralal?
Niresh, the issue is this: the subject of accessibility comes under the local authorities and the provincial councils, and those policies should have been implemented by the respective local authorities. Unfortunately, even to get the architects to fall in line with the accessibility provisions was an issue, was a big task. It was something new. It was something new, and as a result, prevailing upon them itself was an issue. But nevertheless, I must say, all local authorities did follow and create their own. They started off by creating their own accessibility avenues, etc. But it has not caught up as far as the country is concerned. Everybody, even the civil society has to understand, if they're having a restaurant, they need to have accessibility, so that even a person on a wheelchair should be able to visit that restaurant. So these are not things that have been taken in by the private sector as well. And as so much so that the government also, in certain departments, you see that climbing steps is not the answer. Climbing steps, you have to provide accessibility, not the art of climbing steps. No, that's wrong. So you have to provide people. It could be a gradual this thing, but that's okay. But still, for all, you have to create those things. So government has to step in, the local authorities have to step in a big way and see that accessibility is provisions are being followed.
Now, Kesarralal, even the government circular issued by the Ministry of Social Services, which is about 20 years ago, it states that no new buildings should be issued a certificate of conformity, COC, unless they are constructed in compliance with these laws.
Correct.
But as far as I know, the technical officer of your local authority will sign off without even visiting your premises. So, this is something which snowballs. Then you mentioned accessibility and the private sector. I think many institutions do pay lip service. They might have a wheelchair ramp and so on, but these are not
according to
international standards. And of course, the standards are very simple. For example, I have seen, and I'm sure you have, where the wheelchair ramp is too steep.
Of course, I see.
It's so steep that you need
somebody to push.
Not one person, you need about 3 people pushing it. So the whole point is that that differently able people should be respected. They should be able to wheel themselves up that ramp, not ask someone else to push them.
Correct.
And we've often seen these ramps ending up, they end in a parking lot, and then some vehicle comes and parks right there, and the ramp is unusable. So silly things like that. This is all common sense. Then you see ramps which have 90-degree turns, which are not navigable by any type of wheelchair. So things like that. And these are very simple. I mean, how much do you need to spend to build a ramp, for goodness sake? And any private sector institution can do so. Banks usually have, but again, they are not all of them are to international standards. So I'm very surprised about the architects that you mentioned the architects. And usually any building has an architect, unless it's a house in a village or something. You have an architect or a contractor. Why is it so difficult to get them to conform?
I mean, I think no sooner the Supreme Court meted out the judgment, they should have immediately picked it up, because there is no necessity for the local authorities to prevail upon them that you have to ensure that these provisions are being followed. They should have picked up. They have their own architects association, etc. They should have done. But then certain things, of course, I don't blame the architects as well, because there's so much to be followed, so much to be done, etc. But still, for all, there has to be an association of theirs which keeps the members in the loop, that these are things that have to be done. And those things must be picked up and followed. If those things don't happen, and in that case, everything falls. It's the saddest part.
Now, one of the issues I see, Kesarralal, is that there are very few people or institutions which champion the cause of the differently abled. We mentioned the late Ajit Pereira. He did so. But after he passed away, there haven't been any significant cases. But that is a glaring loophole, isn't it? That there's nobody pressurizing.
Correct. We need the civil society to come into the picture. Unfortunately, in this present day context, what I see is we don't see youngsters getting involved in these areas. Youngsters have great potential in getting involved in these areas. They have tremendous potential. They are the people who must take it upon themselves to get involved and see that these things are followed. Because I have observed on many occasions, once you grow old only, you start talking about your rights, etc. You should have done it when you were young. That's the issue. That's the issue. I have on several occasions I've told, whenever I visit an establishment, I said the climbing steps is not the answer. You must have accessibility. You must be able to provide for a wheelchair to come in. That is essential. So we don't have that fully. We still don't have that fully. It's very sad. This is the question of inclusiveness. Absolutely. If we don't understand that if people are not included, if they are not inclusive in any program of activity, they have been left out. We are on the wrong track.
Now let's talk about the consequences of this this non-inclusivity, Kesarralal, because what happens if you can't get onto a bus or a train? Then you become dependent
On somebody else.
on somebody else, which in this day and age, you have, you may have a son and a daughter, but they are married.
They have their own.
They are working. They have their, their spouses are also working. They have their children to take care of and so on. So it's very difficult in this day and age to actually, unless you have a paid attendant or something
correct,
like that.
correct.
So then what happens is you don't go out very much because you can't go out on your own. So you become marginalized.
Correct.
You stay at home. And then, this is a huge segment of society, the elderly population. So if we are not including them, then they become of less use. Just because you are unable to climb onto a train doesn't mean that you're useless to society.
You're part of the society.
So there's a lot that elderly people can contribute to society, which they don't have the chance to do so.
They don't have the chance at all. I feel that the introduction of the private sector, of course, the government is also equally responsible in this whole exercise. When the private sector is brought in to augment the transportation service, I think the private sector made a fundamental mistake. They should have gone into these aspects and introduced new buses, so that with all those facilities, then they would have been very, very successful. Today, we don't see that. Private sector was far more bent on making money. I don't blame them. You have to make money. You have a venture. You have to make money. You can't be running.
But you have to do so ethically.
Yeah. So unfortunately, they have, and there was nobody else to guide them as well. Now the government has come in and said, look here, the Metrobus system, which I feel is catching up, and the government will have so many requests from so many areas. One thing we need to understand is we have to realize whether it is a rural area or urban area, facilities must be the same. That has to be understood. We must ensure that those facilities are provided for everybody. That's inclusiveness. If you don't do that, there's something wrong. Absolutely. So these buses must go to the rural areas as well, so that those people also will benefit.
And so you're saying they should be rolled out nationwide?
Yeah, it has to be rolled out. It will take time. It may take even 3-4 years. That's a different issue.
That's a financial constraint.
Yeah. But still, for all, you must start off with those things and ensure they also being looked after. Not only in concentrating in the major districts, etc. Go into the rural areas as they introduce those buses, so that they are also benefited through this process.
Now, Kesarralal, you mentioned private buses. And of course, the privatization of the transport sector occurred under the J.R. Jayawardena government, late 70s, early 80s. And as you said, these private buses were introduced. There was the famous Mitsubishi Rosa buses. But these buses were in many ways inferior to the existing CTB buses. The CTB buses are larger, more comfortable, and so on.
More space.
So it was the value for money, the quality of it actually went down. Now, what I can't understand is that once these laws and Supreme Court judgments came into effect, how those private buses continued and continue to get route permits.
That's another big question.
Because now, if you take, let's say, a provincial transport authority, Western Province, Southern Province, whatever province, all 9 of them,
Yeah,
they have to issue the route permit.
permits.
So how are they issuing route permits when they are,
A certain segment of the society.
buses are not in conformity with the law?
Yeah,
So
that's true.
that's
There is a
mind-boggling,
problem.
isn't it?
There is an issue. There is an issue. These are things that we have overlooked for a long, long period of time. And even at this stage, late stage, if somebody is interested in these things, I feel that we should be on the correct path. We need to understand inclusiveness is a big issue in this country. You take any sector, even infrastructure, the ability of somebody in a rural area to access water, electricity, etc., is a huge problem. It can't be that way. It should not be that way. They should have the equal opportunity to have access to water, electricity, etc. So these are areas that the government will have to concentrate on and then start moving. We have to understand that development is not in the main districts. It has to go to the other districts as well.
Absolutely. But this is where, now you take the private bus operators, Kesarralal, they have been fighting tooth and nail.
Yeah.
Not just resisting change for themselves and their operations, but trying to deny the public the opportunity to have these new
better services,
low flow buses. And those are not new. I mean, low flow buses have been in existence for decades.
For decades,
But not in Sri Lanka.
Not in Sri Lanka.
So there is a peculiar problem of, entrenched Sri Lankans trying to prevent the system change,
correct.
Which they themselves want.
I hope that the private sector takes a cue from the government and start importing, getting down good buses. I'm sure they will do that, and they should do that to survive. Because if the government continues with this drive and the private sector objects to it and does nothing, they are going to lose. They stand to lose. Somebody else is going to come into the picture and bring buses. Today, everybody accepts that this new bus is a requirement. Irrespective, they don't even talk about the fare. Fare is not the same, but they don't talk. Why? Because comfortable travel.
Absolutely.
That is what they're interested in. Comfortable travel. And even an old person, elderly person, can travel in those buses.
Absolutely. So
getting in is a very simple thing.
And these buses also have added advantages. You can be cashless.
Yeah.
Simply swipe your card.
Correct.
The buses have GPSs.
Yes,
if you have that app, you know exactly where the next bus is.
And you know exactly what time you're going to reach your destination also.
Yes. Absolutely.
So this is the way forward. And everybody had to start thinking or not oppose everything that is being done by the government. We have to pick up. I only hope that the government ensures that these vehicles are well maintained, which is very crucial.
That is a very crucial aspect. Yes.
Because you bring buses, you do everything, but maintenance does not happen in that manner. If maintenance drops, we are in trouble. So the government will have, I hope they have, and mind you, these people who operate these buses, the conductors, are very, very courteous, sir. Very courteous. These are good signs. These are good signs, I feel.
Now, it's very interesting, Kesarralal, that, in countries like Singapore or Kuala Lumpur or Bangkok, cities such as that, or even New York City, Paris, and so on. When we are fortunate enough to visit those cities, we use their bus services because they are comfortable.
Correct.
We use their train services, their metro or whatever, whether they are in London or Singapore or Tokyo or even Chennai. It's perfectly all right because they are comfortable. You can climb on, climb off very easily. But here in Sri Lanka, everybody wants their own personal vehicle because you need your own personal vehicle.
Because
Simply because public transport is not up to
up to the mark, not up to the standard. Anyway, with this, I feel that everybody gets a message that they have to, just like in developed countries, leave their vehicles at home and start using the public transport system. And that's a big mistake. That's a big mistake. We'll talk later about that as well.
Yes, hold that thought. We need to take a short commercial break right now. I am in conversation with Mr. Kesarralal Gunasekera, former Member of Parliament. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
The roar of the crowd. The pursuit.
Welcome back to Face to Face. I am with Mr. Kesarralal Gunasekera, former Member of Parliament, and we are discussing the issue of accessibility and inclusivity in society for differently abled persons and also elderly persons. Now, Kesarralal, you made an interesting point about vehicles, that with the improvement of public transport, we should see less personal vehicles on the road. And this is so, isn't it? When you go to cities around the world which have proper public transport, people tend to leave their vehicles at home, or they'll drive up to the station, and there's a huge parking lot. You leave it there, and then you take the train. In fact, we see this on a small scale in Sri Lanka, where private individuals will allow bicycles and motorcycles to park, because those people have ridden them to the station and they need somewhere to park. So the houses around many stations, whether it's Moratua or Ragama or whatever, you can pay them a small fee and they allow you to park. So you see that, but it's not for cars because obviously there's not enough space. But in the future, do you see Sri Lanka moving towards that?
We should.
You park and ride?
Yeah, we should. Niresh, the government has to come into the picture. They must be in the forefront. They must prevail upon. I start off with, I'll tell you something. Public roads are fundamentally for public transport, goods as well as public transport. When I say public transport, it is mainly the bus. Of course, you can use your private vehicles, but the bus has gains priority over all the others. Why? Because the bus carries so many passengers. But in this country, we tried our level best to have a bus lane, but we have not been successful. In other countries, you see the bus lane operating, and nobody enters the bus lane. But in our country, we cannot operate bus lanes. We will not be able to go from A to B. So the only way is for people who are using private vehicles to get it into their head that if they start traveling on a daily basis to work in their private vehicles, traffic is going to be the same. It'll become worse. And the best way is the government starts with a program, introduce good buses, join in, hop in, and then keep the vehicle. That's like in other countries. We need to do that. So the way the government can start this is declare one day over the week, everybody has to come to work by public transport. If they can do that, that's a good starting point, I feel. Because people will pick up on that. That's very important. You know, I travel most of the time by bus. I travel because I realize I should not be contributing to the traffic.
But Kesarralal, you need the prerequisite of a comfortable bus service and train service.
Correct.
Otherwise, if you just declare that one day, then people will stay home that one day. So
you can't continuously.
Exactly.
You may be able to do it 1 or 2 weeks, but you can't do it every day.
Yes.
But I still feel if government has to start somewhere. Now with this move, I feel that the private sector could come into the picture of providing transportation. Who knows? They will introduce good buses.
Now already, Kesarralal, we see now these low flow buses have been introduced on new routes.
Yeah.
Not on the old routes.
Correct.
And already many people on those new routes are using the buses.
Yes.
Which means that those are people who would have been coming by the cars.
Yeah.
And now they're taking these buses. So already there would have been a lessening of traffic in those areas. And that's one of the brilliant things of this, isn't it? That if you can get, 30% of the people to come in the bus, then that's your traffic problem is solved.
Today, any road, any major road in the country, in any district, traffic during office hours, incoming time and signing off time, traffic. From Mount Lanier to Colombo, it takes 45 to 50 minutes, not even 7 kilometers. Where are we heading? Where are we going? The question is this, I can't understand as to why people who travel in those vehicles, I'm not blaming them, but travel in those vehicles, can't they see that they are adding continuously to the traffic? Why can't they switch on to the transport, bus transport or rail?
But
again, try to do it.
Again, it's a matter of comfort.
I know. But then initially, if everybody does not think like that and get into even if it is uncomfortable, still get into the picture, the government also will be pressurized to improve their public transportation programs. That is very essential. So I think the people also has to understand that they have an obligation to keep their vehicles at home and use public transport. This is a good way out of this whole exercise, and I feel that the government will keep on educating the masses that their travel should be by public transport. Especially during office hours.
Kesarralal, interestingly, when a foreign investor looks to invest in a country, there are of course many items that they look at, the cost of energy, fuel, whether raw materials are accessible, labor laws and so on. But they also look at the public transport system because they want their employees to get to
their factory
on time and to get there in a good mood, not having spent 2.5 hours
on the road,
crammed bus or stuck in traffic in another vehicle. Now it's very difficult for any government in Sri Lanka to deal with the energy prices and the labor laws and so on. But this is a quick win, isn't it? You can easily, within a year or two, transform
the entire public
transport, and then that's a plus, isn't it?
So, Dio, I said, I hope that the private sector involved in transportation takes a cue from the government and start introducing good buses. That would be wonderful thing. Rather than fighting the government and asking them, objecting to everything that the government is trying to do. Come into the picture, join hands, and show solidarity.
That's another interesting point that you raised. Now, why is it that Sri Lankans, we go overseas, there are millions of Sri Lankans literally out there, working, whether it's in Dubai or Singapore or wherever. And we see those systems and the way they work. We come back here. We don't implement those same systems. But if a government tries to implement something like that,
You oppose it.
yes. Why is that? Is there some cultural issue here?
Because there could be a culture. The question is, when we go overseas, the moment you step out of the plane, you see differences, you see changes, everything gets into your head. But no sooner you come back from Katnayaka, everything is forgotten. So sad. It's so sad. So I feel that we all need to understand that we have brought in a government, and whatever the government does, if it's good, for heaven's sake, support and move forward. And as citizens, help the government, not object to everything that the government is trying to do. Every corner, every point, if you are trying to object to what the government is trying to do, and these are good things, This new metro bus system is wonderful, I feel. But I want the government to concentrate on the rural areas, so that those people also will be happy. You need to move that into those rural areas as well. That is very important.
Now, let's talk about another segment of the economy and how this might impact it positively, and that is tourism. Now, Kesarralal, in Sri Lanka, the majority of foreign tourists that we get are not young people. You don't see a lot of families with young children. You don't see a lot of teenagers because there's very little for them to do here. There's not much shopping. We don't have the massive malls that you get in Singapore or Kuala Lumpur. So there's, and young people love to shop. So this is not very attractive to them. Also, we don't have theme parks, not of the size that you would get in other Asian cities.
Correct.
So we don't have any major theme park. We have a few small ones. So people don't travel to Sri Lanka from other countries for our theme parks. Again, the family-oriented tourists would require something like that. They want to have fun. So in the end, we are attracting elderly tourists. When you look at our tour groups, a lot of them are elderly. They're retired people.
Yeah, they are retired people.
Whether they're from Germany or France or so on. Not always so. Now, the Chinese tourists are a lot younger, perhaps, and so on. But when you're already attracting retired foreign tourists, then we need to make sure that our entire country is accessible to them. Because now, if you are, you're retired, but you're in a wheelchair because of your advanced age, is Sri Lanka really an option? Not really. I don't think.
Yeah. No, yes, of course, if you take the country, Niresh, the art of selling, we have failed over a long period of time. We have so many things to attract tourists. But unfortunately, we are trying our level best. I don't blame the Tourism Development Authority, etc. They are trying their level best. But still, for all, there are so many things. And we have to understand, anything that we do must be portrayed in those countries as well, in their news, various things. That is very essential. That's how stories spread and then people start coming. So any successful venture, the news content has to go overseas, not only in Sri Lanka. It's worthless having it in Sri Lanka. Get it overseas so that they see those things. And our agents, travel agents, etc., their role is that, to keep on selling the country.
Yes. But at the same time, Kesarralal, now I would say most of the major hotels are accessible to elderly people and so on.
Yeah.
They have made the change.
Correct.
But when a tourist who's in such a hotel wants to just roll down the road in his wheelchair, he can't do that.
Yeah.
Because our pavements,
Yeah.
I mean, you're taking a risk if you're even walking down,
They are restricted only to the hotel that they are
Exactly.
staying.
Yeah.
They can't even go out.
Yeah. So the pavements or sidewalks, as some countries call, I mean, they need to be accessible as well.
Correct.
So first of all, you can't have a curb. You need to have a slope so that a wheelchair can come up.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you can't have very often you have the pavement is blocked by a tree. I'm not saying to cut down the trees, but I'm saying build the pavements around the trees. Or you will have the CEB with some huge box in the center, or Sri Lanka Telecom or something like that.
Yeah. You get those things.
So now normal pedestrians will go around it to step onto the road and so on.
Correct.
But if you have mobility restrictions, then you simply can't use the pavement.
Correct. Which is okay. Of course, in most of the districts, I would feel that the pavements are in a deplorable state, which is very bad.
So again, these are local authorities have to fix it. Provincial councils,
the government will have
the
to step
RDA, and so on.
Government will have to step in and give money, give assistance. That's very important. Those are areas that the government will have to concentrate on. You have to strengthen the local authorities. We have failed to strengthen the local authorities over a long period of time. Why? Because the center does not take the local authority into confidence. The local authorities in the 60s enjoyed a better position in society. They enjoyed a better position. They were very well accepted, the local authorities in the 60s. But gradually, after the introduction of the provincial council, etc., that glory was lost. And we are still unable to come back to that. Any country, it's a local authority that does the work.
Absolutely.
It's a local authority. If you go to Australia, most of those hospitals are run by the local authority, not anybody else, not the center. It's a local authority. But in our country, everything is taken away from the local authorities, and the center of the provincial council comes into the picture. You don't understand that the local authority can do better work than the center or the provincial council. This is a mistake made by many politicians. I'm a person who is connected to the local authorities. If somebody asked me whether I prefer the local authority or the center, I would say no, I prefer the local authority. Local authority is the key. It's very important. But many people don't understand. Even our representatives don't understand that as well. It is sad to see that the local authorities gradually going down.
So is that the fault of the local authorities and the people in them, or is it the center?
It's a center. The center does not understand that they must give pride of place to the local authorities and get them to do the work. I mean, ultimately the center is going to benefit if the local authorities work. If the local authorities become successful, who gets the benefit? The center. Why can't they see that? Very sad. Why the hell can't the center see the importance of the local authority, which other countries are seeing? You go to any other country, it's a local authority that does much of the work. But in this country, it's not so.
In this country, the local authorities don't seem to have grown beyond what they were doing 50 years ago.
No. Actually, what the local authorities were doing 50 years ago is not done now. They were involved in so many things. Local authorities were involved in distributing water, electricity. It was taken away. Local authorities were involved in distributing water, electricity. What happened? Our great politicians came and took it over completely. There are thousands and thousands of things that I can talk about. So sad. So we need to understand improve the local authorities. Concentrate on the local authorities, give them more money, give them more pride of place. That is very important. Summon them for meetings, etc. Get their input as well.
Empower them and also create awareness of what they can do.
It's very important. I mean, the role of parliamentarians is in parliament, technically. For heaven's sake, don't get involved in local area work. I always say this. That is parliament. Creation of laws, reviewing of laws, how you control your finances. These are the areas for local authorities. Laws, creation. There are so many laws which need to be changed. Do those things. Why bother about some local authority work, etc. and get involved?
Those are areas for parliament, and then there's the area which local authorities need to work on.
Yeah. If the parliamentarians don't concentrate on their work and they concentrate on local authority work, where do we go?
In the same way, Kesarralal, there is a clear gap between most local authorities and the public that they serve. Why is that?
That is because most local authorities do not have, in those days, we had the senior citizens coming into the picture to give guidance, etc., to come out with proposals, etc., to the local authorities. But this government, once they came in, they have brought in that back again, and I hope it will improve in time to come. They have brought in those things where the people in those areas, the grammar seva divisions, etc., can get involved. They can give their proposals. Even the local authority is requesting for proposals from the people. These are things that are important. That is inclusiveness.
Absolutely.
Where you give a chance to the people also come into the picture. You are also part of the whole program. We design our policies, we design our programs the way you think as well. That gives them confidence, etc. That's the way. That is the way. Local authority improvement is good for the center. Successive governments have failed to realize this.
And it is the local authorities, as you said, which can bring in inclusiveness.
Inclusiveness in a big way.
To bring elderly people, differently abled people, all
everybody
back into society, to be productive members of society.
Correct.
And not a burden to society.
Correct.
All right.
That is what, and there is the amount of work that the local authorities can do is huge. But if you don't give them assistance, if you don't give them necessary finances, what happens? I mean, we had a president some time back who removed most of the monies coming to local authorities. Of course, fortunately, there was a change, and this government still continues with that aid program. He had a time. A president who understands so many things took away the aid to the local authorities and said, look, your local authorities have to find their money.
Very short-sighted indeed.
Very short-sighted.
Resulting in disaster.
Very short-sighted.
Right. So a lot of good ideas discussed, Mr. Gunasekera. Thank you very much. That's Mr. Kesarralal Gunasekera, former Member of Parliament, always a source of excellent ideas through his vast experience. Thank you for joining us this evening.
It's a pleasure, Niresh.
And thank you to you at home for watching. Don't go away because the news is coming up next. Have a great evening.